On this episode of Militaria at the Museum, we delve into the shadowy world of clandestine weapons. Next, we explore the bear trap, a remarkable naval innovation designed to safely land helicopters at sea. Finally, we celebrate the journey of Orville Pulsifer, whose story of triumph shows that when driven by passion, even the toughest obstacles can be overcome. Beyond museum exhibits lies a hidden realm of archived artifacts that hold the keys to unlocking intriguing stories from the past. Come along as I meet with experts at the Army, Naval, and Aviation museums, where I've been granted special access to pull back the curtains and reveal the secrets of their militaria. My name is Sandy Hiltz, and all my life I've been captivated by military history. Now, I have the rare opportunity to explore a collection of fascinating military artifacts on Militaria at the Museum. From the Army Museum archives, we're exploring Second World War clandestine weapons. Tools like the lapel dagger and the Liberator pistol. Developed to be easily concealed, these rare artifacts reflect the ingenuity and covert tactics used in unconventional warfare.
Clandestine weapons seem like something we'd see in a spy movie, but I understand that they have a real use beyond the big screen.
They do. They're small and easily concealed, so easily snuck past a sentry or somebody that's searching you. So clandestine weapons are really just any sort of weapon that you can keep a secret. Not your basic everyday sword or rifle or even a bayonet, but something that you can keep hidden in some way.
This is certainly an intriguing selection of things we have in front of us, Julie. It's not the sort of thing you see every day.
It's really not. They're meant to be small and hidden away from the public eye. Especially if we start close to you there, we have a couple of very small thumb daggers. So this is a sample that would have been on display for you to purchase from a cutler. You can see the dagger is just tiny, fits easily between your first two fingers and is ready for a little bit of stabbing motion. The scabbard is meant to be sewn on the inside of a pocket or underneath the lapel of your jacket. So it's really hidden away. And that goes the same for the lapel daggers. And we have three different styles here. So we have this one. It's got some serrated edges, which would be a little bit more damaging to someone. This is a reproduction one, absolutely beautiful. So kind of a more natural grip that we would normally have. This lapel dagger, I think, is super interesting. It's got the cruciform blade. I don't know if you can see that there. So the cruciform blade is very dangerous. So the issue with that shape, so it's that little triangle shape, is that the wound is really difficult to stitch back closed, much more difficult to heal.
Right, and the scale of these, they sort of look as if they're meant to slip just in between some ribs or something. Is that the idea?
They certainly are. None of these weapons are really meant to kill you. So these type of weapons sort of give a little bit of safety in the back pocket. So the idea of them is not really to take out your attacker. It's really to get your attacker to a point where you can escape. So many of them aren't powerful enough or large enough to really take them out, but it's enough to wound your attacker to give you time to get away. So the bobbin here, a lot of people would recognize like a hat pin, but it also has a very tiny cruciform blade on it. And this thrusting dagger, both of these are meant to be sewn into like a seam of a jacket to be easily hidden away. These little tiny ones though, which also have cruciform blades, they could be inserted inside a pencil, and you could still have a little bit of lead on the end of the pencil. So if it was going into a POW camp, for example, you could still sharpen the pencil and use it. Physically, they're very small, hard to wield, but they give a sense of security. But if you're confronting me and searching me and you find these small weapons on me, it maybe piques your interest to think that, oh, you may be a spy. So the hook dagger is an interesting one, though. A lot of them are made actually just by breaking the tine off a pitchfork. And you can see the nice, beautiful curve in it. But these are made to sort of hide inside your equipment, so inside your webbing or inside a pack, and be easily pulled out and quickly used to escape. So if I was being searched by someone, I could, and they've got my rifle, they've got my bayonet, they've got any daggers I had, I could still have that hidden away and quickly pull it out and hopefully escape.
And then what's this little one we have here?
So I think this one is my favorite one. This is a penny dagger, and if we look, we can see it's just a regular British penny. And if it was in your pocket, with a bunch of change, nobody would really look past that. But on the back, we can pop out this beautiful little knife, and this is strong enough to really puncture some veins or even puncture a tire. Just this little tiny penny dagger there.
Oh, that's incredible. I've certainly never seen one of those before.
If you're being searched and they find change in your pocket, they're very likely to overlook that.
Right.
Yeah.
What's this collection we have down here?
These are all private purchase. This is not something that would have been issued by the military. So a lot of these types of weapons are private purchase. Some are military issue, but a lot of them are private purchase. They were okayed by the military for use. So this is a sample, so you could go into the store and you could see a sample of these lovely thumb daggers they were offering.
And then this is one of those little Liberator pistols, isn't it?
That is a Liberator pistol. So these were dropped behind enemy lines for resistance fighters. And this is interesting. So it's a single shot, so you can only load one bullet at a time, but you can store underneath up to 5 bullets in the handle. And then one at a time, you have to open it up and load the bullet in.
And there were a tremendous amount of these dropped into France for the resistance, were there not?
There was a lot of them dropped in France. They became very important resistance weapons because obviously they weren't allowed to have any type of weapons. So if I could find one of those and keep it hidden, in the folds of my apron or my skirt.
Right, and then we have one last thing here, which is sort of something like you would see on TV.
That's right. The garrote is definitely, I think, the most famous of the clandestine weapons, often referred to as a piano wire, but so small and easily concealed that it was a popular weapon. This obviously is very deadly and could take you out, but super light, very well hidden in your pocket. Yeah.
And what really fascinates me about this collection is that, well, with the exception of the Liberator pistol, that these are all private purchase, you said.
They are all private purchase because we're talking about, secret agents, being in behind enemy lines, doing things covertly. It's really whatever the agent felt that they needed. When we really think about what happens during warfare, we have to think about what happens at a higher level behind the scenes. As we look at secret operatives or spies, making sure that we're getting information that helps us plan operations is really important.
Julie, thank you so much for showing these to me today. It's been really exciting to investigate such an interesting time in history and see the ingenuity behind all these different designs.
I'm really glad I got to show them with you and share something new about the Second World War.
Well, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
When we return, I'll be at the Naval Museum to examine the controls to the bear trap, an innovative system that transformed how helicopters safely land on ships. At the Naval Museum, we're exploring the Canadian innovation known as the bear trap. This device transformed naval aviation by allowing helicopters to land safely on smaller ships in challenging conditions. Its success led to widespread adoption by navies around the world, making it a pivotal advancement in naval technology. I understand that you have a fantastic example of Canada leading the way in defense technology in the form of the bear trap.
Yes, we do. The bear trap control unit is just on display down in this room here, and that was used, developed in the 1950s and is still in use today in Canadian Navy ships, but also in many of our allies' ships. The bear trap is a device that holds the helicopter on board the deck of a ship.
Rick, from a distance, this looks like a very complicated piece of machinery, but when you get up close, there's not really too much going on here.
Well, it's actually an extremely complicated machine, but it is made to be operated in a very simple and fast fashion. When a helicopter is coming down onto the deck of a ship, there's about 5 minutes that you can get that helicopter down and secured to the deck. So this thing cannot be complex to operate, but it does have a number of places below it where it's sending out electric signals to various winches. There's actually 2 winches that are operated by this, and it's also sending signals back to the helicopter itself. The operator is standing right here, and the operator has the phone communications with the pilot of the helicopter. The Canadian Navy has always been involved in anti-submarine warfare. In the Second World War, that was mostly done through sonar, and that was a failing kind of technology. The submarines that they were looking for were far too fast, far too quiet, and they went to more electronic devices. They were looking for ways of tracking those submarines as closely as possible, and they decided that the best way to do that was to develop a link between aircraft and ships. The early part of the 50s, much of the tracking was being done by Canadian airplanes, flying off of the Bonaventure and before that the Maggie, and also flying out from shore air bases. And they would be trying to find Soviet submarines, and they could do it with sonobuoys. They would dump them over the side, and they would pick up electronic signals. To get further out, then they needed to have some way of getting out there. And the best way to do that was by ship of some sort. But the ships weren't quick enough to catch up to those Soviet submarines. They would pick them up, and then the Soviet submarine would be gone. So they started using helicopters coming off of Magnificent, the second aircraft carrier, and they were doing what was called dipping sonar. They'd actually have a line with the sonar device on the tip of it, and they would just lift, go to a new spot, dump it in again. So what they were trying to do was find a way that the ship could pick up some signals from a submarine, and then they could send a helicopter out to pick up better signals, closer signals, to come up with the direction the submarine was going. The dipping sonar was not fast enough and couldn't go out far enough, and they started to look at what we need is to have helicopters on board ships. So they needed to find a way that they could land a helicopter and secure it without anybody getting hurt by it or losing the helicopter, or worse yet, losing the ship. All those things could happen. And that's where this thing comes into play.
How exactly would it allow one to land safely on the deck of a ship?
What happens is they actually are able to use this part of the control system to physically secure the helicopter to the deck. The helicopter comes in from the stern of the vessel and sends down a pilot wire, and that is gripped by guys on the deck. Actually, they could drop it down through the bear trap, and there was a mechanism down below that if it was lined up properly, and put on another heavier wire, and that gets hoisted up into the helicopter. And then it's secured inside the helicopter, and the cable that runs from that goes to this. So that's an awful lot of movement for the helicopter to go through, and it's a very dangerous maneuver. So there's a lot of training that goes into this thing by using this device, and the operator here is taught how to keep a very tight line on that using this control over here. The helicopter goes to full power. Doesn't matter whether or not the ship is going this way, that way, or the other way, and it just draws it down. And once it's secure, it's pulled right down through the bear trap. There's 2 beams with almost like fingers sticking out. The fingers prevent the aircraft from going front to back, and the beams prevent it from going side to side. So it's latched in place. It's still tethered, and down below there is a winch mechanism that pulls the helicopter towards the hangar, and then they turn the helicopter blades back towards the stern. They fold the tail up towards the front of the helicopter, pull it in, and it's done. The ship's company It trains together, lives together, acts together. They act as one. Everybody is under the orders of the bridge, which is where the commanding officer is. And they do this because that's the only way of carrying out their mission and keeping each other safe.
Can you tell me a bit about the company that developed this technology?
Ferry Aviation of Canada was the primary contractor on this piece of equipment, and they had done a lot of work building their own aircraft during the Second World War. And then following the war, they did a lot of work for the Canadian Navy, doing upgrades to various types of aircraft that were being used to track and also to do reconnaissance, a number of other functions that they had. They also had a very strong background in building winches, which is exactly what this thing does. It's a big fancy winch.
So these are still very widely used within the Canadian Navy today.
Yes, updated but still used.
Rick, tell me about sort of the lasting impact of this, particularly starting off in the Cold War period when this was developed.
The development occurred over a long period of time. The first installation of this was in 1964. It went into HMCS Assiniboine, and interestingly, the Assiniboine commanding officer is the same commanding officer on board the first vessel that tried to land a helicopter as well. Get it right the second time. Used widely, still in use today. It's very common. They couldn't put a helicopter on a ship without something very similar based on this or using this. It's been said that this invention of the bear trap, the control unit, and the entire device, how it all integrates together, is the single most important Canadian contribution to anti-submarine warfare during the Cold War.
Well, that's certainly quite a lasting impact.
It certainly is. It's ongoing today.
Well, thank you very much for showing it to me, Rick.
You're very welcome.
After the break, I'll explore the incredible journey of Orville Pulsifer, from his role in the Second World War to founding flight schools that trained generations of pilots. At the Aviation Museum, we're discussing the life of Orville Pulsifer, a pioneering figure in Canadian aviation. From leading flight training during the Second World War to establishing Nova Scotia's first flying schools, Orville's contribution shaped the history of flight in Nova Scotia.
Given where he started in life, how difficult would it have been for Pulsifer to become a pilot?
I think it would be very difficult. What we've got to realize that Pulsifer was born around 1903 in Middle Musket Arbor, rural Nova Scotia, from a farming woods family. And at that point, aviation really was an idea. It wasn't a proven technology. It was being experimented with. It was being looked at different ways. So obviously, he was certainly a Renaissance man later on because, again, he understood what they were, flight was, and basically was a pioneer in aviation in Nova Scotia from that point.
Oh, well, I can't wait to hear more about it.
Yeah, let's go down and see some more.
What can you tell me about Pulsifer's early life and his path to becoming a pilot?
Pulsifer had very humble roots, a farm in Musket Arbor Valley in Nova Scotia. He was one of 8. So a large family, farming lumber, which is the probably staple of the sort of around 1903, 1904 when he was born. And he liked challenges. And at a young age, I think there were lots of opportunities he was looking to make money at. And I think he left school in grade 8. So, I mean, he didn't have the education that certainly was part of it. So his path to become sort of an icon in sort of aviation history is an interesting one in that sense, because obviously aviation at that point was in its infancy. It wasn't a big thing, but ultimately he decided that he wanted to learn to fly and actually had to go to Boston to learn to fly. The reason obviously that he went was because at that point the infrastructure didn't exist in Nova Scotia that provided the ability to train pilots and also to be exposed to aviation. With the training in Boston and the understanding of how aviation works, he was able to take that and bring it back to Nova Scotia.
It's interesting that he had to go to Boston just to learn how to fly. What was his experience there like?
At that point, it was Boston was Logan Airport, which is now Logan International Airport, the main airport in Boston. It was a training airfield. The Americans obviously had very strong connections at particularly Boston and Nova Scotia, so it wasn't a stretch to go there. it was easy to get your license there, and obviously Nova Scotia wasn't that point. But I think he was taking ideas that he was learning in Boston to bring back to Nova Scotia, and that was a part of it. After his training was completed, he returned to Nova Scotia, and the Halifax airport was built at that point. And he could come back and he could actually train people. But he had actually had a number of ventures that, in order to fund this, he'd been involved in, which included at that point running a bus with his brother and various other ideas. He always had his hand in sort of various enterprises throughout his life. And that's another part of the interesting story about these other enterprises that funded his aviation experience as well.
What do we have here in front of us?
We've got a set of wings that were presented by Billy Bishop, who was obviously a First World War hero, and then obviously a mug, a beer stein from the officers' mess at the Pendleton base that he was in charge and was commandant of that base. They gave him his own personalized mug to use in the bar. But of all these, the most probably important and exciting item is this logbook. If we take a look inside, that's really the heart of a lot of story, and it tells most of Orville's wartime story.
Oh,
It's
really?
actually in the pages.
Oh, so this is dating to his wartime service.
Right, which is the neat part, is this covers from 1939 to around 1943, and it shows the level of flying that he was doing, and also how many times he flew right across the country, and where the different units that he was attached to throughout his time.
Can we take a look inside the log, Mark?
Absolutely, but let me first don the protective gloves, because it's such a historic artifact. I don't want to taint it with any sort of contaminants at all on it. So we can open it up and basically, these are all pretty much standard artifacts. And again, it's signed and the qualifications, the instructions are in here. But then first entry is November 3rd, 1939. And then it shows various aircraft type, registration numbers, and then pilot in command, and then if he was second in command. So very sort of innocuous sort of start to it. It's very basic, and we go through, you can see the entire time of where he was and months summaries, and then it moves to training school at Trenton, and then we go to Trenton, and then we learn to become an instructor at Trenton. Another interesting part of it too is that throughout the book, it's showing advanced training, it's showing dual tracks, it's showing cross country, it's showing all these different types of flights they had to do, and then we move into different aircraft, and number of aircraft is very different. So very large number of aircraft. But the other interesting thing is that we look at how many days he was actually flying. And so in this period from 1939 to 1943, it's pretty much every day he's flying somewhere. I mean, it's just quite incredible when you look at it. You go, months here, there, across everywhere. We've got, Borden to Muskoka to across. He's flying Yales, he's flying Ants, he's flying Tiger Moths, a huge number of different aircraft. And again, that's November 41, I think that's the year, but pretty much every day. It's quite a remarkable artifact in the sense it is so full, so complete, and so many different flights throughout it.
I know there's a connection between Pulsifer and bringing flight to Nova Scotia. What can you tell me about that, Mark?
Early on, he was involved with the Halifax Airport and the Halifax Aero Club, flying. 1939 comes along. He becomes involved in the RCF operationally, flying training. And then post-war, he got involved in civil aviation again and was actually involved in the first fire observing aircraft, using aircraft to observe forest fires throughout Nova Scotia. And they set up the first organization to patrol for fires.
That wasn't his only post-war involvement with flying, though, was it?
No, because again, he was involved in selling aircraft. He's got a line of aircraft that he sold called Seabees, which is built by Republic in the United States, just outside of New York City. And also he was involved in developing aviation services, flying schools, and operationally bringing aviation to a wider audience.
Mark, thank you so much for showing me this great collection. It's been wonderful to be able to watch you flip through the pages of that log, which charts such an interesting history, and also explore Pulsifer's background and the way he sort of overcame that rural upbringing and managed to have such an impressive and impactful career in aviation.
Yes, I mean, we see a diverse career and life of a celebrated individual. The logbook is only one small part of that. So there's a wide variety of different things that he has done over the course of his lifestyle. And again, we celebrate that life.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing part of that story with me today.
The story of Orville Pulsifer tells a great story of determination, of willingness, of innovation, of challenges, and trying to surmount the challenges. That's the real story behind it, is that.
Having special access to go beyond museum exhibits reveals some of history's best-kept secrets and most interesting stories. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of military artifacts on another episode of Militaria at the museum.